Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you can't take a vacation without spending half your time on your laptop, or delegating feels super risky because no one else?
I think you can.
What is up, everybody? We're reacting to this reel called One Solution That Solves 99% of Problems. It's Alex on Mosey Reel, so let's see what this fully does too. Let's see.
Solve a lot of male problems by getting in shape and making money. You'll still have problems, they'll just be smaller and you'll have more resources to handle them. So let's talk about the making money part first. Fundamentally, in order to make money, you have to provide value to someone, either an employer or customers. But either way, you have utility, which you exchange for money. And so by making that a goal, then it means that you're going to increase your own usefulness. And so somebody who is more useful all of a sudden develops other ancillary skills around that utility that they can use in other parts of their lives. If you're good at sales, guess what you can do when you're talking to girls? You can use the same conversational skill set. If you're trying to negotiate a purchase for a car or a house or whatever, like those skills generalize, they transfer across domains. And so a lot of people think it's like, well, when would I ever be a salesperson, or when would I ever be a outbound whatever? Like, it doesn't matter. It's not about that thing. The thing is, it's like real life skills actually do generalize. Like, this isn't elementary school or middle school when you're learning calculus or algebra or whatever and thinking like, what am I going to use this in real life? One, it is real life right now. Two, these skills do get used across domains. Of all of my friends who are centimillionaires and billionaires, to a person, they started in what I would consider a high volume sales environment. So that's either door knocking, cold calling, or some sort of in-person business where they had many conversations with strangers on a daily basis. And I think and I'm talking not like a month or 6 months, I'm talking like 3-5 years where no one knew their name. They were just some faceless representative that stood there at the door, saw people, sold memberships, sold insurance, sold solar, sold whatever. And the thing is like, skill development happens through volume and feedback loops. So it's the number of repetitions you have times the amount of improvement between repetitions. Brute forcing the amount of volume definitely will help if you can give yourself feedback. I've seen people say, hey, I've actually made 100 pieces of content. Now this is like 1% of people because most people do nothing. But of the 1% of people who say, okay, I posted every day for a year. The thing is they didn't do the most important part, which is you don't just like make a video and post it and just every day like, hey, make a video, post it, make a video, post it. You have to look at what you did and what you could do better. Fundamentally, that is the cornerstone.
Because if you don't look at what you did and what you can do better, you may never know where this content will lead and how many views you will truly have, which means you may never know where this life will lead you to until you trust the system and test it over and over and over again. That's why I'll keep on posting my school app over and over and over again until I get people into my school. That's why I'm making it $10 or $30. It's in my bio. And it's $200. You don't need to pay the $200. I'm just keeping the trial for 2 months for $30 and for $10. Then after that trial month, then after that trial 2 months, I will bump it up to 100 and 150. Then that's when shit gets real.
Of feedback. And so you look at the top 10 videos you made over the last month and you say, okay, how do I do more of that? And how do I do less of the bottom 10%? And you just pick one thing that you did well there and you try and do it in every video going forward. And that develops a checklist of things to do so that you develop a skill. And so speaking from my own experience, the first sales conversation I ever had, first off, I had zero sales training. No one was like, hey, this is the script. This is how you go over. They're like, hey, here's a new lady. Go sign her up. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't even know this was a sale. I didn't know the term sales. He said, go sign her up. And I said, okay. And so I walked over and she was like, hey, I want to know more about the gym. And I said, well, what do you want to know? And she was like, well, I mean, like, how much is it? And I was like, oh, it's whatever, $150 a month. And she was like, okay. And I was like, you want to sign up? And she said, I left my credit card at home. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I'll be back with the credit card. And I was like, cool. And so I walked out, and it was like 2 minutes, right? And I walked out, and the owner, Sam, was there with a few of other gym owners. He had brought a few gym owners, and so it was like 3 or 4 gym owners there. And he was like, damn, he was like, that was fast. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you closed her? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, with a credit card? And I was like, oh no, she's gonna go get it and she'll be back. And they just looked at each other and then looked back at me and then just started laughing at me uncontrollably, like couldn't breathe at how dumb what I had just said was. And the thing is I had no experience. And I tell that story because so many people assume that like I walked out of the womb closing deals. You know what I mean? Like, hey, nurse, what are you doing later? You know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't like.
Yeah, jokester. Yeah, jokester. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. That's just funny as hell. That's just funny as hell. I'm trying to smile. Get looking.
That, right? Like I didn't know. I didn't even know the term. And so, over time I just started developing like, okay, well, what do you do? And I watched other people sell. I was like, okay, they start with asking them why someone's there, ask them about their goals, ask them things that they've done in the past that didn't work. I said like, okay, that seems to work okay. And then when they ask them to buy, then if they don't want to say yes, they ask them more questions rather than just saying okay. And so I started to develop at least an understanding of the framework of how sales occurred, but I still wasn't good, right? And so then I went through like that rocky cutscene period where this is where I'm very grateful for this, is that Facebook ads is when I started running them in 2013 were super cheap. And so it actually gave me so many repetitions because not only was I taking 15 to 20 consults a day in person, I was also working leads. And so I'm talking to strangers over the phone to set the appointments. And so all I got was just names on a list. And I would call them, set the appointment, like, who is this again? All of that. And by the way, if you are local, you just say the name, pause with a question mark at the beginning. You're like, John? And then they'll be like, yeah. And you're like, this is Alex. I'd pause, and they're like, who the fuck is Alex? I'd be like, from Facebook, you signed up for a blah, 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 our thing.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Yeah, I'm just calling to make sure that you're not a crazy person from the internet, and neither am I. I was like, we're actually on the corner of X and Y. I was like right next to the 7-Eleven. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I just wanted to see what time you want to come by. I was like, we have the sweetest facility in the world. Not really, but it's at least pretty decent for this area. But we have 5 out of 5 coolness. And they would just laugh and they'd be like, I can make it at 6. And I'm like, 6 works. I was like, do you want a picture of me or just of the address? And they're like, just the address. I'm like, all right, sounds good. I'll text it to you and I'll see you later today, right? So that kind, like, notice the like half giggles between each word. Like, it's showing that you're a positive tone person, high energy. And someone's like, man, this guy seems cool, or this gal seems cool, right? And so they're more likely to show up. They're more likely. Now, if I maintain that tone, if they give me an objection, I can pivot really easily. If I'm like neutral or like, hi, I saw that you signed up on the internet for our thing. Would you like to come in? They're like, well, tell me more about it. They're like, well, it's just, you have no room for messing up. And so I always tried to have more rapport and bring a lot of energy. And the thing is like, if you've seen any of my content, I'm not naturally like a high energy person. I will continue to work, which is different than being like up here. And so I developed a lot of things to try and keep myself energized. And so I had a small trampoline that I would bounce on before and between every sales appointment. And it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it's like $100. If you buy one of those little trampolines and you bounce either between sales calls or between people, like I'd have people coming in as I was still bouncing, and I'd be like, I know this is ridiculous. I was like, but try and be in a bad mood on a trampoline. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I challenge you too. You could be in a bad mood. If you try jumping around like you feel like such a child, it's ridiculous. But what would happen is like I would also get a little bit of exercise, my blood would keep moving, but it's also just like mentally, literally bouncing gave me a lot of energy for these appointments. And so I say this because I developed all of these things over time. And so if you're starting out, you're not going to be good. That's why you're new. You have no experience. But there's a difference between, there's a story that, shoot, I can't remember where it is, but there was a foreign kid who had never seen a banana before. And so the adult gave the kid a banana. And so the kid took the banana and then bit right into it with the skin and everything. And another child was like, "You're such an idiot." And then the adult yelled at that child and said, "No, he just doesn't know any better." And there's a very big difference between being dumb and being inexperienced. Right now, you just don't have reps. And so you're going to make a lot of mistakes, like biting into the banana, for just letting someone walk away, assuming it's a close, and they say that they're just going to come back and call you with their credit card, right? By the way, that never happens, very rarely. But instead, you want to just peel that banana. You want to bite into the banana, bite into the orange, all of those mistakes as quickly as possible, and not judge yourself for making the mistake, and see the mistake as part of the process of being like, that didn't work. And if I develop enough of these doesn't works,